everybody. Welcome to Old Fashioned Catholics. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Nick, and we are Catholics who like to drink old fashions. We usually film very late at night because that's when people who are really in their vocation get any free time. And that's what we do. Kevin, do you have anything else you want to say?
Yeah, if this is your first time joining, we're going to introduce our guest in a second. We're going to put what we're drinking up on the screen as well as tonight's guest. And you can grab a drink of your own, alcoholic or non, doesn't matter to us, but you can pause it right now.
And welcome back. So Kevin, what are you drinking? What are you starting with tonight?
Yeah, this is clearly not an old fashioned because that would be rather large. I'm going the other end of the spectrum tonight. This is a wheat ale, a session wheat ale. So you can have one or four. It doesn't matter because it's so nice and light. So that's what I'm drinking. It's from Founders All Day Vacay. They're a cool brewery.
Founders, okay.
Yeah, it's very hip. I like it because the beach looks like Park Point in our hometown.
Yeah.
How about you, Nick?
I am just drinking bourbon and a couple dashes of bitters. I think I would say it's probably around 3 ounces. I just dumped a bunch and then I added water and but I'm drinking it in an old-fashioned Catholic's glass, which Mr. West, we will send to you as soon as the shipment from the dollar store comes in. That's all I'm drinking is just bourbon and bitters. And so with that, we can introduce our guest. He needs no introduction, but we have tonight on the show, Mr. Christopher West. Thank you for joining us.
It is my honor, my pleasure, and my joy.
Okay, so on the show, sir, we only have 2 questions that we ever ask anybody. And the first is, what are you drinking?
But before we do that, before we get to the drink, I know we wanted to start with a prayer tonight. It's something that we keep forgetting in our videos, Nick. We got to do it. Chris, would you
see Dubs on here
in a prayer?
Happily. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. We ask you to guide our conversation in the direction you would have it go. And we thank you for our drinks that we are enjoying in the midst of our conversation. May it bring us joy. That's what you desire for us. You have come so that your joy might be in us and our joy might be complete. And we ask for a little taste of that joy in our conversation tonight. Amen.
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 So I am drinking a hot buttered rum in a handcrafted little mug here that my son Thomas made.
Oh, and come on.
Yeah. He also introduced me to this particular drink. And as a Christmas present, he gave me a jar of this buttered mixed. It's butter and brown sugar and cinnamon and clove and a couple other miscellaneous spices that you put in there, stir it all up. Then you put a big generous dollop of that hot butter, or it's not hot yet. It's cold at this point. You put a big generous dollop of that butter sugar mixture in a cup. You fill it with water, you zap it until it's nice and hot, and then you put a generous splash of black rum in there.
Black rum. Okay.
Yeah. And it is delicious. It's really beautiful.
I've never heard of that.
It's sweet and savory and just
So is it a brand like the premix, or is it something that your son just mixed together?
Oh no, my son mixed it up himself. Yeah. Yeah. He's the kind of guy who loves like craft coffees, craft beers, craft drinks, craft mugs. And that was one of his blessings to me for Christmas, was to hook me up with a premix that he made of this hot buttered rum mixture, and it's delightful.
And so for then the splash screen that our editor will put up of what you're drinking, do you know what brand of black rum that you
want me to go grab it? It'll take me 30 seconds to go get it.
You might as well.
That's awesome. A hot buttered rum, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Hot buttered rum. Isn't that from, what's it called? It's a Wonderful Life?
No, that's Flaming Rum Punch.
Oh, Flaming Rum Punch. That's right. So by the way, I'm wearing my Bailey Brothers Building and Loan t-shirt, but it's underneath the
Oh,
sweatshirt.
that's like your new Superman t-shirt. You just wear it under everything now.
I just wear it under everything. But
I
it's
need to try.
good.
No.
No.
Oh, so this butter mixture, you must keep it like in the fridge, I imagine.
Here we go. I should have grabbed that too. So this is
Oh, Kraken.
Kraken.
The Kraken.
The Kraken.
Oh,
Black
we enjoy the
spiced
Kraken.
rum, 94 proof. A generous splash of that will take you a long way.
That's wonderful. So we'll have to
I
make
love
that
the
next week.
Kraken.
For the episode. I've seen the
So,
Kraken
yeah,
stuff, but I've never had that.
Equal parts butter, brown sugar, and then just throw in your favorite spices: cinnamon, clove, whatever else you want.
It's like the rum version of a hot toddy. I like it.
Yeah. It's very
Yeah.
much like a hot toddy. And because I've been a little under the weather, it's serving me very well.
It's wonderful. I'm glad you were under the weather simply so you could have that amazing drink on the show.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah. So the only other question we ask the whole time is just, and we mean this, and most people have answered, honestly. We mean it though. Truthfully, honestly, now it's 11:43 your time. So your day is at an end. Truly, honestly, then, sir, how was your day?
I woke up in a bit of a grog. I took a nice dose of NyQuil last night. And one of the things I like about getting sick is NyQuil sleep.
Amen. Amen.
I know it can be addictive for some people. Like I know people who are addicted to NyQuil. I am not addicted to NyQuil, but I do enjoy NyQuil when I'm sick. I only take it when I'm sick. But I will be honest, I do kind of stretch out the sickness. Like I think I'm probably 80% better right now. And I'll probably still take a good dose of NyQuil. Well, maybe not after this. Maybe this is NyQuil might be double dipping tonight. But anyway,
isn't there a warning on that label?
I think there is no alcohol with the NyQuil. So I woke up in that post NyQuil, don't want to get out of bed kind of state of mind, you know. But 2 days ago, it was really bad. So 2 days ago, I woke up and I felt like I was under like 12 feet of water, like glued to the bottom of a pool or something. Just that heavy body feeling. You don't go anywhere. You don't want to do anything. I spent all day Monday in bed. I spent yesterday mostly in bed, and I spent today mostly in bed. Although I was working today, I had a lot of meetings. I was doing a lot of Zoom calls from bed,
Nice.
which, yeah, is not ideal, but yeah, I was getting my work done and dealing with my sickness today. I've had, I mean, we've all had so much of Zoom, you know, ever since COVID happened. And it's a blessing and a curse all at the same time. Like this is a blessing right now. We have Zoom and we're able to have this conversation from different parts of the country. I don't even know where you guys are. Where are you?
We're in the far north, so we are in the Diocese of Duluth. Nick is right on the border of Canada, and I'm on the tip of Lake Superior.
Okay, so you guys are Central Time. You're an hour earlier than I am. I'm in Pennsylvania, near Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But yeah, I was just commenting that Zoom is a blessing and a curse. I love Zoom, that it gives us this kind of opportunity. I do not like a day when I go from Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call. And today I've had 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my fifth Zoom call today. So not my favorite kind of day, to be honest.
Sure. Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
so you did Zoom from bed. Did you now I remember talking to Bill recently. He had said in all glory, he was very excited that you guys had moved to a 4-day work week, which was an amazing, and he told me all about that, which is amazing. But was today one of the off days, or was this still a work day for you?
Today was an official work day. Our off day is Monday. We do a 3-day weekend. We just started this policy as of the new year, 2022, for all of our team. And we did a lot of research into this. There are a lot of European companies that have 4-day work weeks, and job satisfaction goes up, loyalty to the organization goes up, and even productivity goes up. because of job satisfaction. And there's something to when you know you have 4 days only, we're not decreasing people's responsibilities.
Right. Yep.
We're saying, we're inviting you to see that you can fulfill your responsibilities in 4 days. And we're giving it a 6-month trial for our team. And we're a small team. The Theology of the Body Institute is a staff of 12 people. And we said, we're going to give it 6 months. So at the end of June, we're going to reevaluate. And my guess is everybody's going to want to keep it. So they're going to do their darndest to get their work done and fulfill their responsibilities. And my guess is this will be our new policy, but that remains to be seen. We shall see.
Sure.
I'm
That's
all
wonderful.
for
That's-
that. I think that's an awesome thing that you guys are trying.
And we're doing it because we ourselves, especially in ministry, you can fall into the temptation of, you're working for the church, you're working for the Lord, you're working for a good cause. Well, I'll just, I got to do it. I'm going to put in an extra however many hours this week to get it done. And there's something to that. There's something virtuous about that. I mean, there are weeks like when we're teaching our courses, everybody on our team who's involved in those courses, we're putting in far more than a 40-hour week. We're putting in, long days and long nights. And Jen Settle, who's our director of programs, she has calculated, she's been working for the Institute since 2008. We founded it in 2004. She has spent more than 2 years of her life at this retreat center in Pennsylvania, where we offer these courses, because she's been to over 100 courses over her tenure of working for us. And so people put in their time. But my point is, we know we need to model living out the theology of the body. Is the first place we do that is in our primary vocation, right? It's a principle I learned years ago from my spiritual director that I don't implement perfectly, but I know it to be true. And it is this: my priority, my number one priority in my life is my relationship with the Lord. My number two priority is my relationship with my wife. My number three priority is my relationship with my children. And then my ministry to a broader audience flows out from there. And it is so easy when you're involved in ministry to get those priorities mixed up and messed up.
Yeah.
So
much
we
inverted.
are trying, what's that?
Pretty much inverted sometimes.
Yeah, we can invert that very, very easily. And I have fallen into that. And I know everybody on my team has had their own wrestling matches with that. So we're just trying to institute as a policy for our organization. The priority is your primary vocation. We don't define ourselves by the work that we do. Our primary vocation is where we have our primary calling from the Lord, and we gotta take that seriously. So we're trying to model that. That's what we're trying to do. We don't do it perfectly, but this is an attempt to give it more seriousness.
Kevin, you gonna say something?
No, I was just saying, yeah, makes sense to me. I think that you mentioned some of the European companies and countries that adopt that style of work, and we hear ad nauseum the work-life balance that we're all trying to achieve. But if I'm prioritizing these things correctly, if God's first and my wife's second and my kids are third and my work is fourth, then that means that whatever I can do in my work to increase the quantity and quality of time with the other three, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story that had a big impact on me. This was 20 years ago. I was in Rome giving some lectures, and I got the call, which, if you know what that means, it's pretty dang exciting. If you get the call, when John Paul II was Pope, it meant you were invited to his private mass the next morning. And I got the call on a Friday night, and the next day was December 8th, 2001. It was the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and I was invited to this private mass with John Paul II in his chapel. About 25, 30 people were invited to these masses. And at the end of the mass, we're all ushered into his library, and we get a chance to meet the Holy Father, greet the Holy Father. and have a little exchange. And I was introduced to the Holy Father as a professor at the John Paul II Institute. I was a visiting professor at the Melbourne, Australia branch of the John Paul II Institute at the time. So the Pope mistakenly thought I was from Australia because the visiting professor part didn't get inserted there. But I was telling him about my work, and I gave him a copy of my book, and we had a little exchange about that. And
Which book was it, for beginners, or was it the male and female he created them? Or the original?
The male and female he created them is John Paul II's book. It's actually Man and Woman he created them. That's John Paul II's book. The book that I gave him was the first one I wrote, which is called Good News About Sex and Marriage.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
the Q&A version.
Q&A book.
Yeah.
And I gave him a copy of that book, and we had an interesting exchange about it. But to be honest, I was hoping for a little bit more conversation about the work that I was doing, spreading his teaching around the world. But what really lit up the Holy Father was when I showed him a picture of my wife and my kids. That's what he wanted to talk about. He was much more interested in the fact that I was trying to live this teaching than that I was teaching his teaching. Spreading it. And he gave me extra rosaries for my wife, and we only had 2 kids at the time. We have 5 now. But I left there just wow, that had an impact on me. Like he was so much more interested in my family, in my primary vocation, than in my ministry. And that's just telling of who John Paul II was. So yeah, I've returned to that many, many times over the years when I've gotten out of balance.
It's so funny. So today, so my wife and I were constantly, we're new Catholics in that we became Catholic in 2008. In fact, when I met you in 2008 in Denver at that head and heart immersion, I had only been Catholic 51 days at that point. So I was brand new. I was a Catholicant at that point. I used to call myself. But so we're trying to read like the works that all the like fervent Catholics all know anyway. And so today, just this afternoon, my wife Jason was playing with the kids. It's her day off for the week. And we started reading Witness to Hope. And we just started the preface. So this was just like the beginning, but already in the preface, he was talking about how John Paul II was like a lay pope. Like he had such a focus, and he was raised with the laity being such an important thing that even as the Pope, he never left that. He was always so very much for the lay people. I had no clue until this afternoon, because I became Catholic under Pope Benedict, and so I've studied TOB under you, and I'm learning, but I didn't know that aspect of him yet. So that it seems to bear out with what you had said too.
You know what my favorite memory of that course was that we taught up in the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, was I got to stay in the papal suite because John Paul II stayed there at St. Malo Retreat Center, which sadly has now burned down. I don't know if you knew that. Down, yeah. But John Paul II stayed there, and I stayed in his room, and I I don't know if you remember a joke I made to the students.
I do.
What year? Well, yeah, this was 2008, right? Because that's the year you came to church. So I'll let you tell the joke that I told.
No, you tell it.
No, it's all yours. It's all yours.
No, I just remember because and my wife had listened, and I had listened to all of your, 10 disc set and everything at that point, and we'd gone to a weekend thing. But I remember loving that you would joke about this. You said that you stayed in the papal suite, and that you realized when you were using the restroom, you were sitting on the chair of Peter. And and I have always wanted to be able to ask you because you joked about stealing the toilet seat, and I would be interested to know if you went home with that seat.
I did not. I did think about it. But I didn't.
Yeah, because wouldn't it be a 3rd class relic now?
Well, 2nd class.
2nd class because it touched his body.
Yeah.
We're assuming. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that this topic has never come up on one of your podcasts before.
No, it is
No,
not.
and I'm sure it doesn't come up in a normal interview you do either.
I have never ever spoken of this publicly other than that time 14 years ago.
Awesome. I've thought about it so many times because that's a genuine human thought when you're sitting there going like,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah,
Wait.
exactly. Like John Paul II sat here. I mean, here I am sitting right where he sat. And your mind goes there. And
You're just a better person though, because like, so I have a relic, like a piece of one of like the things he wore, like a little cloth I keep when I travel. I would not have been able to not take that toilet seat home with me. Like I would have paid for a new one, but I would have paid for it after the fact when I was home and the plane landed and I had that sucker and it'd be in my house.
One of the reasons I didn't do it is because I thought to myself, I bet someone else has already done this. I bet this is a replacement.
Yeah.
This is just a random toilet seat that a bunch of people have used.
And then you're going to look really dumb when you admit to them, like, hey, I took your toilet seat. I don't want to talk about it, but I stole your seat from your.
Yeah. And I don't want to be venerating a relic that's not a real relic. So
it's true.
Yeah. And documenting the authenticity of the toilet seat is kind of difficult. There's no stamp underneath.
I have no authentic relic radar that I can run over the, no.
That brings up this kind of a wild story. So a friend of mine here in town, he actually used to be my boss. He's a pastor and he's got the largest private collection of papal artifacts in the world.
Wow.
And he got, he has, certain connections in Rome with people who find him stuff. And somebody was going through an old closet in the Vatican and found this box of essentially junk. They called my friend right away and they basically said, hey, I have these lead seals and they look like they might be important. You should take a look at them. So he got them and found out and was able to authenticate them. They were all 4 of the seals that were locking the Sistine Chapel when Pope John Paul II was elected.
Come on.
Wow.
So these lead seals, so Nick, you wouldn't know this, but the lead seals, they lock themselves in the Sistine Chapel with 4 lead locks and they're sealed and every one is unique. So there's never any 4 made that way again. Typically, right after a conclave, people steal them. Like, so if you're an extremely lucky collector, you might get 1 or 2. So he got all 4 of John Paul II's seals. Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
I have a sad story to share. Speaking of relics of John Paul II, it reminds me of this story. A student of mine told me this, I don't know, 15 years ago. She was for a time part of the of Mother Teresa's community, discerning as a sister, and she had been assigned to Rome. And she had many occasions to be very close to or at the side of John Paul II at public audiences. And the Pope knew her. They kind of had somewhat of a, he knows me, I know him thing going on. And one time, you know how the Holy Father, John Paul II, had this hair that he would comb back straight over his head. Well, one of these long locks had fallen down in front of his face. And there are all these pictures being taken of him. And she, with this motherly heart, she was right next to him and she just reached out to put his hair back. She just didn't even think, oh my gosh, this is the Pope, I shouldn't do that. But she just reached out and did this with his hair. And the Holy Father grabbed her hand and gave her a very stern look. And she felt crushed, like, oh my gosh, I just offended the Pope. And later, after the public audience, John Paul pulled her aside and apologized. And he said, I'm so sorry. I have that reaction when people reach for my hair, because often people will reach and try to yank it out in order to get relics.
Sheesh.
Oh,
that's just weird to think about, being in a state where every day you had to feel that way, that if somebody was coming at you, it was so that they could take something from you.
Yeah. Like literally takes part of yourself away, part of your body.
It reminds me of that
Man.
clip of Francis when he was shaking that one lady's hand and she wouldn't let go and he smacked her hand. There's a couple of years ago that
Oh,
I don't know if
saw
you
it.
saw that. Yeah, but he
It's-
smacked. It was very serious. But I'm like,
Yes.
and at first you're like, man, but I mean, it's the same concept. Like if you're constantly, your whole life is that anytime you go in public that somebody wants from you, wants to grasp at you and take from you, that's just it's gotta wear on you as a human,
right.
you know, it's gotta,
Mm,
that's crazy.
gosh,
Um,
this is a little tangential, but this is for both of you because I figure if somebody knows, one of you might. The man who shot St. John Paul II, did he have any sort of conversion? I know there's video of
Did.
John Paul forgiving him, and is he still alive or whatever happened to
Yes,
him?
he is still alive. In fact, I was just teaching a course at the beginning of this month on the Blessed Mother. It's my favorite course to teach. And at the end of the course, we do a little section on Our Lady of Fatima, and we get into the whole assassination attempt of John Paul II because of its connection with Fatima. And I've done a lot of research on this. And Ali Agca is the attempted assassin. And when he met with John Paul 2 years later, 1983, John Paul came to his prison cell.
That's the video, right? Where there's footage?
Yes, you see them together in his prison cell. And John Paul II said the only thing Ali Agca wanted to know was, who is this Lady of Fatima and how is it possible that you are still alive? He said, I'm a trained assassin. I was at point blank range. I aimed to kill. I know what I'm doing, and you're still alive. Who is this Lady of Fatima, and what does she have to do with this whole thing? And John Paul II, this was in 2005, soon before his death, in a book called Memory and Identity. It was the final written work that John Paul II gave the church before he died. And in that book, there's an extensive reflection that he gives on his experience of the assassination attempt, where he tells this story. And he says that Ali Agca just wanted to know about Our Lady of Fatima, and he said, I believe it raised in his heart this difficulty of reconciling the fact that he's a trained assassin, he shot to kill, he's at point blank range, and the Pope didn't die. He says, I think this caused in Ali Agca a search for the answer to the religious question. And then John Paul II said, I hope he found his answers. And indeed, this was just 3 weeks ago when I was teaching this class, a student brought up on the internet that, and I didn't know this until 3 weeks ago, that Ali Agca converted to the Catholic faith on May 13th, Feast of Our Lady of Fatima, I believe in the year 2007. I might be wrong on that year, but I think it was 2007, May 13th, Feast of Our Lady of Fatima. He became Catholic.
Whoa.
Crazy.
So how about that?
I'm glad I asked. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Some serious business. You
Well,
know what a
praise
lot of
God.
people don't know? A lot of people don't know about May 13th, 1981. Now, of course, it came out in the year 2000 when John Paul II revealed the third secret of Fatima, that those 3 children in Fatima, Portugal in 1917, the third vision or third secret was a vision of a bishop dressed in white being gunned down by a spray of bullets and arrows. And Sister Lucia herself, she was the only visionary who lived past the age of childhood. She died just a couple months before John Paul II in 2005. She attested that as soon as she learned that John Paul II was shot on May 13th, 1981, she believed this was immediately, she realized this was the prophecy of Fatima. Anyway, what people don't realize about that day, May 13th, 1981, is that John Paul II was driving into St. Peter's Square to announce the establishment of the John Paul II Institute for Studies on Marriage and Family, of which I am a proud graduate. He was going to announce that this arm of his to spread the theology of the body around the world. Before he could make that announcement, he's shot down. Somebody did not want this theology of the body to spread around the world. Now, why is that? The plot thickens. One of the messages of Our Lady of Fatima was that Russia would spread her errors around the world. Now, when we hear that, we think of communism, and rightly so. But if you dig deeper into the roots of communism, Marxist philosophy, you'll find that Karl Marx believed the fundamental class distinction that needed to be eliminated, right? The whole Marxist theory is the idea of class distinction needs to be eliminated in the name of equality, right? He says the fundamental class distinction that needs to be eliminated is the distinction between male and female for the propagation of the human race and the establishment of the family. So the error of Russia, the deeper error of Russia, I propose, and I believe, is precisely what we are living through now in the global attempt to erase the distinction of male and female. And the theology of the body is the antidote to the error of Russia. I believe that's why diabolic forces wanted John Paul II dead, among other reasons, but that was certainly one of the primary reasons, I believe.
That brings up certain controversies that exist within Catholic circles. There are some who I know have posited that the third secret of Fatima hasn't fully been revealed, and it seems very strange. And then there are those that have even brought, maybe you guys have heard this, there are those that think that Russia was never really consecrated, that the consecration of Russia never happened, and thus still needs to happen. Have you ever heard any of those kind of things?
I've heard all of that, and I don't believe any of it, because Sister Lucia herself said that John Paul II properly consecrated Russia to the Immaculate Heart in 1984, March 25th. And she says that the third secret has been revealed. John Paul II revealed it. So I'd say Sister Lucia is a trustworthy enough source.
I'll give her that.
Data source,
Human beings, we are prone to I don't know, take a liking to theories or conspiracy theories or what have you. It's kind of titillating in some sense. When reality itself doesn't fascinate us enough, we kind of have to go off on these tangents. I have that penchant sometimes too. I get it, but I think we really have to resist it and trust what John Paul II told us, and trust what Sister Lucia told us.
Yeah. One of the things that I and maybe you've talked about it, I don't know, over the years, but so you specifically have been pivotally influential for both Kevin and I, so I've never heard of Theology of the Body. I wasn't even Catholic. Father Mike asked us to come to, he was doing a 4-week course on TOB. The first priest I ever met, the first mass I ever went to was Father Mike Schmitz in Duluth, and he was talking about something. He had just come back from your head and heart immersion course, and this is in 2007. He had just come back, and he was talking about it, and asked, we had started to ask him questions about the faith, and he said, "Oh, you should come to my thing." And we went to the third week of a 4-week course. So we missed the first 2 weeks, and we showed up late because of my wife, and we were transformed fundamentally from that first night forever. Like, it changed me as a man. I'm sure it's the same with Kevin. Changed me as a husband, as a father. I wasn't a father at the time. One of the questions I've always had, though, is for you then, do you remember when you first were sort of lambasted by TOB, like when it became transformational, not just informational? Like, do you remember when that happened in your life?
Absolutely. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I'm still having those moments of it being transformational in my life. Like it's ongoing. But I remember very clearly, it was September 26th, 1993, when I was first introduced to John Paul's teaching. And I remember the date because it was my sister's 20th birthday, and her high school religion teacher was at my parents' house for dinner. And just I'll rewind a little bit in the story. At the age of 20, I came back to my faith. I had not practiced as a teenager. I had lived a sexually active life as a teenager and experienced firsthand the wounds of doing that. And I was hurting. And I remember falling on my knees as a 19-year-old guy saying, God in heaven, if you exist, you better show me. And you better show me why you gave me all these desires, because they're getting me and everybody I know into a hell of a lot of trouble. And soon thereafter, I took it upon myself to study the scripture. I barely had faith at this point, but I thought, okay, if what I was taught as a kid is real, then the Bible has something to do with what God wants to tell the human race. And I'm going to start reading it. And I read it specifically with the intention of understanding why God made us male and female. And over a period of about 3 years of daily reading the scriptures, specifically looking for answers to these questions, I came slowly over about a 3-year period to see what I would now call the spousal vision of the scriptures, that the Bible begins with the marriage, it ends with the marriage. Right in the middle of the Bible is the Song of Songs, the great erotic love poetry, that God throughout the Old Testament speaks of his love for his people as the love of a husband for his bride. And that Paul tells us in Ephesians 5, the union of man and woman is a great mystery that refers to Christ and the church. The scriptures started to come alive for me. The sacraments started to come alive for me. I started understanding the Eucharist as the consummation of the marriage between Christ and the church. I understood why only a man could be a priest, because you need a bridegroom and you need a bride. I understood why priests were celibate. I understood why Jesus said in the resurrection, we're no longer given in marriage, because marriage is a sign here on planet Earth that's meant to point us to heaven. And it's like Jesus was saying, you don't need a sign to point you to Disneyland when you're in Disneyland. You're there. And I started talking in these ways. And this, I'm telling you guys, this was setting me free. I'm now in my early 20s at this point. It's the early 1990s. And I am being liberated from years of addictive sexual acting out. And I'm starting to tell everybody about this. And people are looking at me like I'm crazy. And I remember this night, my sister's 20th birthday party. This religion teacher was there. I knew she was educated theologically, so I started sharing some of my ideas with her to see if she thought I was crazy or not.
That's awesome.
And the first thing she said was, after I shared some ideas, she said, "Oh, you must have read John Paul II's Theology of the Body."
And you hadn't.
I said, no, what's that?
That's awesome.
She said, oh, you haven't read it? You're talking just like the Pope. I said, what? The Pope talks about Christianity and the Bible and the human body like this? And she said, oh, you're going to love this. And she told me where to get it. I ordered it the next day from the Daughters of St. Paul. And it used to come in these 4 little books. I still have them on my shelf. And over about a 3-month period, at the end of 1993, I devoured John Paul's Theology of the Body. And I remember it was confirmation after confirmation of everything I had been learning. And of course, it took me to a whole new level of understanding. Yeah. And I realized then that I was holding something in my hands, and I really believed this at the time, something as big as the cure for cancer. That's what I felt like. And if you discover something that important, you can't keep it to yourself. You have to start telling people. And I had a vision then. I was actually pursuing a music career at the time. I was shopping an album of music that I had written to different record companies at the time. And my life just went off in a total different direction. I knew I was going to study this for the rest of my life and share it with whoever would listen. And one of the first people who listened was a female friend of mine. We were part of a Christian fellowship group at the University of Maryland. And she invited me to her campus. She went to Catholic U. She was the first person to invite me to give a talk on the theology of the body. This was April of 1994.
Wow.
And at the end of this talk, she was asking very intelligent questions. And that was the first time I went, She and I had known each other for a couple of years at this point, but I would marry her a year or so, year and a half later. So yeah, Wendy was, my wife was the first person ever to invite me to give a talk on John Paul's teaching. And she's been the heart and soul of this ministry for, well, we've been married 26 and a half years. So
Yeah, man.
You
Yes.
You have made comments over the years, just at talks that I was at and stuff regarding her. And I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it was way back. You were talking about how your wife said something to the effect of, you're out there giving all these talks on how to, like, be a husband and be all these things and pour out yourself. You don't have any right to give those talks because you don't do that. And I remember thinking, like, that's a woman, that's a good wife right there, who just, like, laid you low, put you exactly where you should be.
Yeah, this was 2005. We had been married about 10 years. And I honestly thought the first 10 years of marriage was great. I had a great wife, great kids, and my career was growing, and I was traveling the world as a best-selling author and teacher. And I really thought my ship came in when the biggest publishing house in the world offered me a lucrative book deal to write a book for husbands called Loving Her Rightly. This publishing house brought me to New York City, and they wined me and dined me and offered me a good chunk of change. And I came home very excited to tell Wendy all about it. I was like, hey, honey, check this out. We're going to be able to put some money aside for the kids for college. And this big publishing house in New York City wants me to write a book for husbands called Loving Her Rightly. Isn't that awesome? She did not think that was very awesome.
So good.
This was the straw that broke the camel's back. And her face just dropped when I told her the title of the book. And I was like, what's the problem? And she said, honey, you and I need to talk, and it's going to be long and it's going to be painful. But you need to know, here's the short version. You are in no place to be writing a book for husbands called Loving Her Rightly. And by God's grace, thank you, God, I listened. I hadn't done a lot of listening in the 10 years of our marriage up to that point. And on that day, I listened. And I did not write that book. Instead, over the next several weeks and months, I just let Wendy tell me from her perspective over many, many hours of conversation what it was like for her to be married to the theology of the body guy for the last 10 years. And she was right. It was long and it was painful. And I realized I was wearing a lot of masks. And I had to go on a kind of archaeological dig of my own heart to find where these patterns of faulty relating they were causing my wife so much pain. Where did they come from in my own story? And it took me back to a lot of painful stuff from my childhood that I was kind of reliving, working out in my marriage, just kind of rehashing, if you will, like pain that I had experienced in my childhood, I was now dumping on my wife. And it was the beginning, and this was right at the time John Paul II died as well. And I really sensed that I now had an intercessor in heaven who was basically saying to me, okay, Christopher, you understand my theology pretty well up here in your head. Now it's time to journey from here to here, from the head to the heart. And as it's been said many times before, these 18 inches from the head to the heart are the longest journey you'll ever make. And so I'm still on that. I'm still on that journey. I'm still looking at ways painful stuff from my childhood has affected my marriage. but I've come a long way. I've got a long way to go, but I've come a long way. Maybe one day I'll write that book, but if I do, my wife will be the co-author.
Well, isn't it astounding though that the things that you stumble upon and that stumble upon to you as a child, they get bedrocked in there, and then you become an adult. You think you're an adult, you think you're a married man, you think you're all these things, and you get a ways in and you're like, I'm still this kid. Holy cow. Like, I'm living as the kid. I'm not living as an adult. I'm living out of instinct from this kid, whether it's abandonment or porn or like all the stuff. It gets embedded so young, and then we're supposed to grow up, we can't, like it's
Speaking of living as the kid, have either of you seen the Bruce Willis movie called The Kid?
Yeah, it's so
I
good.
have not.
All right, you got to see it. I show this to my
Okay.
students.
Okay.
I show this to my students because it is so insightful about where our crap comes from.
Which is really interesting because Bruce Willis as a person, he's really far gone. Like, he needs some TOB. But I digress.
Yeah, no, watch, Kevin, watch this movie, The Kid with Bruce Willis. Came out in 2000. Whoever wrote it is a genius. It's brilliant. And I've seen it probably 15 times, and every time I see it, I get more and more and more out of it. It's really an examination of where our wounds come from in our childhood and how we end up living them out in our adulthood if we don't address them. It's very insightful.
Holy cow.
I was going to ask you, so then, like, as being the TOB guy, obviously, but being a dad and a husband, or how old are your kids, first of all?
Yeah, our oldest is 24. Then we have 24, 22, 18, 15, and 13.
Okay. So in the course of them growing up, and you've always been the TOB guy, and even if you weren't like the TOB guy as a speaker, you've been living TOB. It's been transforming you. You've had moments of walking on water, all those things. What has been, or at least what comes to mind as maybe one of the hardest things that is still fundamentally true to get from yourself and your lived experience and your transformation to instill into your kids? Like, what has been one of the hardest things to translate to them?
Yeah. Nick, that's
in your experience.
That's a great question. And I'll just preface my answer by saying this, that being the TOB guy has in some ways handicapped my parenting. Yeah. Like every job has collateral damage. Like a truck driver is going to have back problems because he's, over the course of 30 years, he's sitting on a truck and he's going to have back problems if he's not careful. There are certain things that over 30 years of doing this work, I have these ruts in my brain. I have these deep tracks because I've given these talks over and over and over and over again. And my kids don't want the TOB guy to show up at the dinner table. They want their dad to show up at the dinner table. And when I'm trying to pass on life lessons to them, they want that to come from their dad, not from the teacher, and it's difficult for me because the ruts in my brain of being the teacher are so deep. It is hard for me to take that hat off. And all of my kids, each in their own way, have suffered as a result of that. So there's a price to pay. It doesn't make it all easier because I'm the TOB guy. And each of my kids have had to wrestle with the work that I do. They usually go through a period of enthusiasm in their, like, from 8 years old to 13 or 14. They kind of think it's cool what dad does, and they'll come with me on trips occasionally and really like it. But then, and I think this is good and healthy, that in their later teen years, at least the ones I've had 3 who've passed through later teen years, each of them have had to, and again, I'll say it, I think it's healthy. They've had to push back. They've had to resist me. They've had to challenge me. They've had to just find answers to their own questions in their own way. And I've needed to give them their own space to do that. And also particularly my two older sons, 24 and 22, they're old enough to share with me honestly things I got right as a dad and things where I really screwed up.
Nice.
And that's been another kind of humbling. You know, I think even right now I'm in a stage as a dad where I'm going through a similar thing with my adult children that I went through with my wife. The story I told, you know, you're in no place to be writing that book. You know, each one of my kids would if I was writing a book, you know, parenting with theology of the body, you know, my kids would laugh me out the door. I mean, they'd be like, Dad, you're in no place to be writing such a book. Now, to be honest, even if I had written that book for husbands in 2005, well, guess what? It would have been a good book because I have some solid ideas, right? And I could here's partly the problem. I could write a very helpful book for parents on how to raise your kids on the theology of the body. But does that mean I've lived this perfectly? You know, because when you're writing a book, you're given a lot of ideas and theories, and but the thing is, my kids have been the guinea pigs for my theories, and some of them have panned out and done well, and they're grateful to me and to Wendy. And some of my theories were really painful for my kids. They didn't work out. So all that to say, I'm just a guy trying to learn how to get through this life, and I make mistakes like anybody and everybody. And I do have a deep theological knowledge about John Paul's teaching that not a lot of people have, but that has not necessarily, in fact, it has not at all saved me the normal trials that any dad goes through in trying to raise kids in this world.
It's just so weird because you can like TOB, I'm not the same human. Like I guess I am in some form, but like finding that in 2007, it changed every single thing about how I view every single thing. And still I'm an a-hole. Like still, like it's real.
Yep.
But my kids, they can hit you at a spot. They can hit you at a spot that like, no, TOB isn't there yet. Like it's somewhere, but it hasn't hit that spot yet. And you're just still that jerk. It's like Kevin and I have talked about, it's the number one content of every confession of mine is that I'm a horrible father and husband. Like it's not getting better. So it's weird that dichotomy exists. It's like what Paul talks about.
It's humbling. It's very humbling. When I was going through a really painful trial in my married life and in my ministry some years ago, this was another painful trial. I've had lots of painful trials. We all do. That's life, right? Yeah. But I remember reading something that Pope Benedict said about Saint Peter, and it really, really consoled me and helped me and gave me a much more realistic understanding of what the journey towards holiness is. And he said, we have an all too idealistic image of the saints. For example, we think of Saint Peter as the denier before Pentecost and the rock after Pentecost. And he says, this is an all too idealized image and mistaken. He says, the truth is he was both rock and denier before and after Pentecost. The wheat and the weeds grow together in all of us, right? That's right in the catechism.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation with friends in the last couple of weeks, how the worst of us and the best of us exist at all times.
Coexist
and we can go to either goalpost. Most of us try to walk in the middle, which is the problem, but we're all capable of the worst and the best.
Yep.
And it's like they're fighting each other within us at all times.
Yep. Old Adam and new Adam is in each and every one of us. And I think one of the goals of good spiritual direction is to help someone recognize when they are living from old Adam. And I've slowly, like, I'd say those first 10 years of married life, I was living from old Adam the large majority of the time.
Yeah.
and new Adam showed up every once in a while, which gave my wife hope. But old Adam was alive and well, right? Old Adam, I'd say in the last 15 or 16 years, old Adam is certainly still in there, and he certainly shows up, but I've learned how to recognize when he shows up. Sometimes I recognize it as he's showing up, and I'm able to say, It's more often that I recognize after the fact that he showed up.
When you're sitting in the confessional going, oh,
Right.
right, yeah, okay.
Right. And when I'm saying to Wendy, honey, forgive me. In fact, just before I came on this podcast, I was asking my wife for forgiveness for something. And it was just so clearly, I was living in my heart from old Adam. It's a constant battle.
You think about, like, you know, Paul, we were telling the kids the other day, we were reading in Acts, the conversion of Saul to Paul, and how this is the dude who wrote the majority of the New Testament, but he's the guy who's saying, like, I see there's a war in me, and there's two sides, and it's still in me. And he was Paul at that point. He was the apostle, and he was writing epistles and suffering in prison, and he was still writing, like, no, there's a war, and the things I want to do, I don't, and the things I don't want to do, I do. And there's like an encouragement in that, you know, like,
Yes.
And I talk all the time about how John Paul II in a footnote, like towards the end of TOB, had mentioned that there are 3 infallible, indispensable means of grace, and how you expect them to be all these big things, and it's just prayer, confession, and the Eucharist, and how when you fail, there's still the confessional. There's still, you can't fail. You can fail and still not fail because of God's grace, not because of your own. And as a husband and a dad, that just carries you. Yeah,
I'll tell you, one of the biggest game changers for me in this whole journey was my spiritual director said this to me maybe 12 years ago, and it was just one of those moments, like, just wow, illuminating, life-changing moments. He said, Christopher, you are a recovering perfectionist. You think a saint is someone who has his SHIT together. He said, a saint is someone who has all of his or her SHIT open to the merciful love of the Father. That was a game-changing moment in my life. We have again an all too idealized image of the saints. Saints are not perfect people. They are people who know they are perfectly loved in all their imperfections. And that's something I need to learn over and over and over again. Why? Because I'm a recovering perfectionist, and the perfectionist believes he won't be loved or lovable until he gets his SHIT together. And when you know you don't have your SHIT together, you think that makes me unlovable. Right. The good news of the gospel is that while we were still sinners, he showed his love for us. He loves us in our crap.
Yeah.
When we know that, when we let that in, that love in, transformation starts to happen. But when we're striving to win or earn love, trying to be perfect to win love, we're just spinning our wheels. We get nowhere.
Oh man.
I know it's getting late. I have a couple of questions that Kevin, I don't want to jump because I know that you had thought some stuff ahead of time as well. Do you have anything you want to? I don't want to monopolize.
Ask your questions, because the next thing I'm going to say is, Christopher, it's time for you to give us a final toast.
Okay,
right.
So I'm going to circumvent that for as long as I can. No, the first one is just that when I was a Catholic youth minister before I was ever Catholic. I got hired at a church,
which is the best. That's
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah, I remember Father Mike calling me, being like, "Hey, would you want to interview at a Catholic church?" And I was like, "You've lost your mind. I'm not Catholic. That's not going to happen." And it turns out the entire staff, they were all converts, and they were all like, "Yeah, this guy's a goner." So I got hired as a Catholic youth minister in 2007, before I was ever Catholic. Wow. in 08. And I was sitting in my office one day, and my pastor walked in, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I was just thinking about the mass, and I was thinking how it's got to be bigger than I ever thought it was. It's got, I think I don't get it. Like what I grew up thinking church was and stuff. And he said, you know what you need? Never mind. You're not ready. And then he started to walk away. And I was like, you jerk. You're a jerk. I said, Father, you can't just say I need something and say I'm not ready for it. Just at least let me know what it was so that when I'm ready for it, I'll be there. And he said, okay, listen, I don't want you to get this, but when it's right, you need to read Spirit of the Liturgy by Cardinal Ratzinger. And he left the room and I ordered it immediately. Like I told him I'd wait. And as he walked away, I had it in 2 days later, and it changed. It just on par with Theology of the Body.
Oh yeah.
It just dismantled, and it just,
Beautiful.
and so what I have heard, and I've never gotten to go to TOB2 just because 3 adoptions and kids came along and we were living out of the country, and now we're moving out of the country. But one of the things I've heard is that TOB2 then relies heavily on Spirit of the Liturgy. And I wanted to, you talk all the time about JP2, and rightfully so, but I also wanted to ask, because he seems to have formed me in unique ways, Pope Benedict. I was just wondering, where does he fit in for you just personally? And again, not as TOB guy, but just you as a person. How does Pope Benedict XVI impact you, and where does he fall in?
He is a very close second to John Paul II in terms of theologians who have shaped and formed me. The most books I have in my library of a single author are from John Paul II. Second most are from Benedict XVI / Ratzinger. So he's number 2 and very close to number 1. I mean, it almost a tie with JP2 in my life.
So Spirit of the Liturgy, then, is that pretty pivotal as you get deeper into TOB?
It was a world-rocking book for me. World-rocking book for me. It opened me to see the marriage of John Paul's teaching with Benedict's teaching. There's a profound marriage between the two. They have a different style of writing and different language that they use, but there's a profound unity in their thought. And Spirit of the Liturgy might have been, I wonder if that was the first Ratzinger book I ever read. I don't know. No. The first Ratzinger I ever read, forgive me. First Ratzinger I ever read was Introduction to Christianity. Rocked my world.
So good.
And I read that under a professor and mentor of mine, the late Monsignor Lorenzo Albacete, who was a very close friend with Ratzinger and John Paul II. And I got to learn about JP2 and Ratzinger from him.
Unbelievable.
The Spirit of the Liturgy and Introduction to Christianity are like the 1-2 punch from Ratzinger if you really want to get into his thought. And I quote from those 2 sources all the time. In fact, I'm excited I'll get you an advanced copy, in fact, of a book of mine coming out later this year on the liturgy, Theology, the Body, and the Liturgy. I call it, the title of the book is Eating the Sunrise.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Good.
And then the subtitle is Meditations on Liturgy and Our Yearning for Beauty. So I'll get you guys an advanced copy of that.
Yeah, there was something, I mean, in Spirit of Liturgy, you'll be reading and it's so heady and it's deeper than you can fathom. And then he'll say things, and I talk about this all the time. He'll say things like, I remember before we would go on a journey, I remember my mother leaning down and tracing the cross on our foreheads before we go out. Like, that's so personal. He talks about, he's going on, and then he talks about, I remember the cold marble on my head as I was ordained, laying on the ground. And so you're like, this is like this. Maybe he's the Pope or emeritus, but he's got all this visceral. I still remember being a kid. I remember laying there on that day on the cold marble. Like, it was just such a weird mix of things that I was struggling to grasp as a non-Catholic yet, and not having experienced any sacraments or any of it. But at the same time, like he was more of a dad. He was such a dad in even his writings. But yeah, anyway.
Have you read his book, also Meditations on the Liturgy, called A New Song for the Lord?
No.
Oh, get your hands on that one. Get your hands on that one,
Okay.
baby.
Write that down, Nick. New song for the
New
Lord.
song for the Lord.
Tomorrow
I
morning.
quote in this new book of mine coming out later this year. I probably quote more from Ratzinger and Benedict than JP2 because it's on the liturgy, and I draw extensively from Ratzinger.
It's like a handoff. It's like John Paul II transformed the world. I mean, pivoted nations and whatnot. And then he just handed off to Benedict, and he was like, I got it. It's cool. I got this. The only other question I had, so I don't know if you remember in the Denver TOB Head and Heart during the talent show, you and I got to sing together, and we sang.
What I'm looking for. I remember it.
But I don't know if you remember that I chose the wrong key. I don't know if you remember that. It was inescapably high, and you were screaming and I was screaming. And I remember I went back to my room that night and I felt so ashamed. I just felt like I botched that moment so bad.
Like so high that we couldn't hit the notes high.
Well, so high that those weren't notes; they were screams, and it was like Linkin Park as opposed to U2. But I did want to ask though, besides U2, which again, like U2 was always very big for me, but not as pivotal as they have been for you. They have in recent years. But besides U2, when it comes to music and when it comes to rock, who is your favorite if you can pick one, or among your favorites when it comes to music besides U2?
Yeah, I'd have to go with Springsteen. He's been a lifelong influence. I first heard Springsteen when I was like 8 years old. Born to Run came on the radio. This was the 1970s, and it rocked my freaking world. Like my world split open, a yearning. He taught me how to yearn. Springsteen taught me how to ache and yearn. I had no idea at the time that he was teaching me to ache and yearn for God. But that's what he did. He awakened my aching for the infinite. This was a great treat for my heart. In August, I was teaching the new evangelization class that I offer for the TOB Institute. And an opportunity came my way that week to go see Springsteen on Broadway. But the tickets were $550.
Woo.
And I'm like, can I possibly justify? I don't think I can justify. I'm a family man. I got to raise kids. I got to send them to college. I can't justify $550 to see Springsteen. And my students found out about this and they raised the money for me. And my students sent me to see Springsteen on Broadway. And it was brilliant. If you haven't seen, it's on Netflix. Springsteen on Broadway is on Netflix. So watch it. He is a brilliant storyteller. And he's very reflective about his Catholic school upbringing, and he's critical of it, rightly so in many ways, because of, the style of Catholicism he was raised with, very rigorous and, that whole thing. But he also admits very openly and honestly how his music has been inspired by a Catholic imagination. I'd really encourage you, just as men who are interested in culture and art, dip into that gift of Springsteen on Broadway on Netflix. You will not regret it.
That's crazy. Awesome.
Sweet.
Okay, so U2, Springsteen, and what would be the top third?
I'm a big Beatles fan. When I was a teenager, I was a huge fan of the band called The Alarm. They broke up in the early 1990s, and then the guy who started the band got other members, and I haven't really followed them a lot since the band reformed, but throughout the 80s, I was a huge fan of The Alarm. They toured with U2 in the early 80s, and they were kind of the same ilk as U2. I'll tell you a quick story that it's one of those stories I fall back on when I'm just, Lord, do you really love me? I think of, yes, he does love me because he gave me my wife, he gave me my kids, and I think of this night. Yes, he really loves me. It was my bachelor party. This was November 16th, 1995. And I found out 2 days before my bachelor party that the lead singer for The Alarm was doing a solo concert in Washington, D.C. And that's where I was living at the time. And I told my buddies, I said, I don't know what you have planned for my bachelor party, but rearrange it. We're all going to see Mike Peters perform at this club. And we went there for my bachelor party, and I went a little bit early, and I got to meet Mike Peters ahead of time. And I told him that my bachelor party was there, and I'm getting married in a couple of days. And he said, oh, great. I'll save some seats for you up front. And if you have any requests, you can just let me know. And so we were having some good back and forth during the show, and he was playing all my favorite songs. It was just him and an acoustic guitar. But there had been this opening band, so there was a full drum set up there and everything. And at one point, he looks out under the lights. He says, where's the guy who's getting married in a couple of days? And I raised my hand, and he said, do you have any special requests? And I said, yeah, I want to play the drums with you.
Jeez.
And you could tell he was kind of like calculating in his mind. Like, if this guy knows how to play the drums, this will be awesome. If this guy doesn't know how to play the drums, this will be terrible.
Yeah.
And he was like, should I, shouldn't I? And then he said, what the heck? You're getting married in a couple of days. Get on up here. And he says, what song do you want to play? And I said, any song you wrote, I know it. You tell me. And he said, well, what's your favorite? And I told him my favorite. He said, get back there. And this favorite song of mine starts with the drums. And I went right into it. I knew the whole thing.
Jeez.
And the place went crazy. They're like, I don't know, 500 people in a small little club, and they just went berserk. And I got, at the end of the song, I came out from the drums to thank him. And he said, what are you doing? Stay back there. That was awesome. And he called up the electric guitar and the bass from the opening act, and we did another 5 songs together.
No way.
And I was drumming with my musical hero at my bachelor party. It was, God was just smiling on me. And if I'm ever that God loves me, I think of my wife, I think of my kids, and I think of that night.
You have to.
Is there video of that somewhere, anywhere?
There is. And I have written to his organization to try to get it a couple times over the years, and I've never heard back. The closest I came, there was a documentary about his career that came out just about 3 years ago. And there was some footage from that tour.
Of you.
But not of me, not of the night.
Okay.
Yeah.
So close.
Yeah, so close.
Holy cow, that's amazing.
That is proof. That's proof that God loves you. I mean, that's like what you draw up in your imagination when you're a teenager of like how you're gonna like win the girl. Like, this is how you do it. Like, it's like your ultimate fantasy.
It was pretty dang special, I have to say. I just felt heaven was smiling on me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't. And of course, all my best friends are there. It's my bachelor party.
That's the end of an 80s movie. Like, that's everything the character wants is just there. And then the movie pans out as you finish.
It just happens.
That's amazing.
And he gave me a poster at the end of the night of his tour. And he wrote down all the songs that we played. And then he said, Christopher, dreams do come true. Yeah, I still have it. I still have the poster right in the basement here next to my drum set.
Do you get to drum very often?
I do. I'm in a band with my son.
Did you know that Nick's a drummer Christopher, did you know Nick's a drummer as well?
No, I didn't know Nick's a drummer. Yeah, my 15-year-old son, he and I are in a little father-son duo, and we play pubs and wineries and parties and weddings, and we have a blast.
Are you guys on the internet at all?
Yeah, I think we have a little demo video there somewhere.
Do you guys play any songs by The Alarm? Do you guys?
We do.
Yeah.
Bring it circle.
We do. So yeah, my son plays the drums and I play guitar typically, but he also plays piano. And when he gets on piano, I get on the drums.
That's good. You're raising them up in the way they should go. You're being very biblical. And,
When I sat he's 15 now. I sat him down at my drum set when he was 3 years old, and I saw right away that he had rhythm. And I said, Isaac, if you keep at it, one day you and I are going to start a band together. And he kept at it. And when he was 10 years old, he was ready. So we've been doing this for over 4.5 years. We've been doing this. It's a blast. I love it.
I recently, well, I guess this is a year and a half ago, my 10-year-old well, he's 10 now, but he started in band. He started drumming, and then she let him sit at a kit one time, and he came home. He's like, Dad, I really like to drum. And so for me though, like, one of the pivotal drummers in my life was Carter Beauford from the Dave Matthews Band. And so I'm showing
brilliant.
Well, he's perfectly ambidextrous in all 4 limbs. And so I'm showing my son, like, not trying to tell him he has to be like Carter Beauford, but just like, this is what a drummer looks like. He's blowing bubbles when all 4 limbs are they're doing, it's just, yeah. So it's fun when they start to kind of dive into that, especially music, and they start to get into it. But yeah, anyway, Kevin, do you want to do your thing?
It's been good, my friends. I could talk for another 5 hours, but we need to let our guests go and be there for our wives and kids in the morning. So Christopher, would you can close us in a toast. Wait. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, just thank you so, I mean, for impacting Kevin and I's lives, of course, but more or less just for being on the show and taking your time out when it was a long day. And thank you very much for your gift.
Yeah, we're incredibly grateful. We're gonna fangirl on you for a long time after this.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy every The Alarm album that I can find. So,
all right, if you want, the best Alarm album is called Declaration.
Okay.
Listen to the Declaration album. But they remastered it and they added all these other songs that weren't part of the original album, so it's on iTunes, but it's not the same as the one I listened to in the 80s, sadly.
The Declaration from The Alarm.
Declaration album, yeah.
Declaration album.
All right.
And the best song, and this was the song I opened with, is called Blaze of Glory. Blaze of Glory. Just look that up. Look up the song Blaze of Glory by The Alarm.
Okay.
All right, Nick, I know what we're doing after this.
I know. As soon as we click end, that's what I'm looking up. I got my phone open.
Well, if you would lead us in a toast, it could be silly, it could be serious, it could be whatever you want.
Well, I want to raise my handcrafted little mug here and my no longer hot buttered rum. It's more a chilled buttered rum at this point. I want to raise my glass in a toast to the good news that we are truly, truly loved in our SHIT. And that as we open our SHIT to that love, that love can really and truly transform us from the inside out. I praise you, Lord. I thank you for your love for me, for Kevin, for Nick, for all the listeners. May we not be afraid to open up our broken humanity to your tender, tender love. Hear, hear. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Good on you.